Dragon priests are Skyrim's ancient nightmare fuel, servants of the dragons who were so devoted to their masters that they refused to stay dead. They clawed their way back as some of the most powerful undead enemies in the entire game. Today I'm ranking every single one from least to most powerful, and explaining exactly what makes each of them terrifying, starting at the bottom with a priest who had the most elaborate plan to cheat death and still ended up last, Hevnorak. Hevnorak is the most over-prepared failure in Elder Scrolls history, and I can prove it. Before he died, this guy literally drained all the blood from his own body as part of a calculated ritual to resurrect himself as a lich. Not a panic move, not a last resort, a premeditated step-by-step plan to achieve immortality. In life, he built an entire army through mind control, torturing his followers into total submission until they had zero free will left. You can still find the torture devices scattered throughout Valthum as evidence of what he did to people. Here's where it gets really interesting. An ancient warrior named Valdar considered Hevnorak so dangerous that he voluntarily imprisoned his own soul inside Valthum just to keep Hevnorak too weak to fully come back. Think about that. A man chose eternal death just to babysit this guy's corpse. But here's the kicker. After all of that, the blood ritual, the mind control army, the warrior who sacrificed everything to contain him, Hevnorak wakes up and fights you with basic shock magic, chain lightning, a storm Atronak, and his own unique lightning staff, roughly 545 magicka and 1,490 health at a fixed level 50. That's it. Every bit of his terrifying mind control ability, gone. Completely absent from his combat toolkit. The most calculated path to immortality in all of Skyrim, and he ends up at the bottom of the list. But at least Hevnorak had a plan. The next priest on our list couldn't even manage that, Vokun. Vokun might be the most forgettable dragon priest in the entire game, and honestly, that's kind of impressive when you think about it. In a lineup of ancient undead sorcerers who ruled over civilizations, commanded dragons, and terrorized entire regions, Vokun is just there. His name means shadow in the dragon language, which is almost too perfect. The guy literally fades into the background. He guards Highgate ruins in the Pale, sitting next to one of Skyrim's least visited word walls. Even the game seems to have forgotten about him. There's no major quest tied to his encounter, no dramatic backstory waiting in journals scattered across his tomb, no personality to speak of. You walk in, you fight him, you leave. That's it. And here's the thing, his stats are completely standard. 1,490 health, 545 magicka, fixed level 50. Nothing that separates him from half the other priests on this list. He hits you with the same destruction spells you've seen a dozen times before. Zero surprises, zero memorable moments. He is the definition of just another boss. But here's where it gets interesting. His mask is actually one of the more useful ones in the game for certain builds. It gives you a 20% cost reduction to conjuration, alteration, and illusion, which is a utility caster's dream. And because it's classified as heavy armor despite being entirely magic focused, it's perfect for arcane warrior builds that want spell efficiency without sacrificing armor rating. So the irony of Vokun is this. The priest himself left almost no historical record, no documented deeds, no legacy worth mentioning, but the mask he drops, genuinely solid. The most anonymous dragon priest in Skyrim carries one of the better rewards, but if you think Vokun is unremarkable, at least he didn't drive his own followers to mass suicide. That honor belongs to someone far worse, Ragat. Ragat's followers killed themselves to get away from him. Let that sink in for a second. This wasn't an enemy army storming the gates. His own cult members, people who had willingly devoted their lives to serving the dragons, chose mass suicide over spending another day under this man's leadership. And they didn't just do it to escape the torture. They did it to prevent Ragat from capturing their souls after death. That's how terrified they were. Even dying wasn't far enough away from him. Forelhost, the ruin where you find Ragat, is essentially a crime scene frozen in time. Notes and journals scattered throughout the dungeon document exactly what happened there. The psychological manipulation, the physical torture, the slow, deliberate breaking of every person under his command. You're walking through a place where an entire chapter of the dragon cult was systematically destroyed from the inside by the very priests they served. It's one of the most genuinely disturbing pieces of environmental storytelling in the entire game, and most players just sprint through it looking for loot. In combat, Ragat fights with fire-based destruction magic. Wall of fire, lingering flame attacks, the works. His baseline stats match the previous two priests we've covered, but fire's lingering damage makes him slightly more punishing than shock or frost equivalents. You take the hit, and then you keep taking damage for seconds afterward. It adds up fast if you're not paying attention. His mask adds 70 points of stamina, which is interesting. That's not a caster's reward. That's a warrior's bonus, hinting that Ragat was a warrior priest in life, someone who combined physical brutality with magical dominance. It fits perfectly with the image of a leader who ruled through direct, personal violence rather than distant magical manipulation. But here's the familiar irony. A priest so feared that hundreds of people chose death over his company? In Undeath, he's a moderate difficulty fight that any prepared player clears without much trouble. The man who made an entire cult commit suicide to escape him gets taken down by a dragonborn with a couple of fire resistance potions. But if you think Ragat's backstory is dark, wait until you meet a ruler whose madness destroyed an entire city that once loved him. Otar the Mad. Every dragon priest we've covered so far has been pretty straightforward evil. Power-hungry tyrants, sadistic cult leaders, the usual. But Otar is different. And honestly, his story hits harder than any of them. Here's the thing. Otar the Mad wasn't always mad. Historical accounts describe him as a genuinely beloved Nordic chieftain who ruled the city of Ragnvald with wisdom and justice. His people actually liked him, not feared him, not obeyed him out of terror. They respected him. He was, by all accounts, a good leader. And then something broke him. Nobody knows exactly what it was. Maybe Daedric influence crept into his mind. Maybe he dabbled in dark arts that slowly consumed him. Maybe it was just the crushing, corrupting weight of absolute power grinding down a good man over decades. Whatever the cause, Otar's mind shattered, and the wise chieftain became a violent, unpredictable despot. The transformation was so complete, they literally added the mad to his name. But here's the part that makes this story genuinely tragic. It wasn't some outside hero who stopped him. It wasn't the Dragonborn or a legendary warrior. His own people rose against him. Two of his own warriors overthrew and imprisoned him. The man they once loved became the man they had to lock away. In combat, Otar fights with shock-based destruction magic. Chain Lightning, Command Daedra, Ebony Flesh, Greater Ward. He's moderately difficult, particularly punishing if you show up without shock resistance. Nothing game-breaking, but he'll make you work for it. His mask is where the irony gets almost poetic. It grants 30% resistance to fire, frost, and shock simultaneously. That's the most balanced defensive mask in the entire Dragon Priest lineup. A perfectly balanced mask for a man who was once perfectly balanced himself, before he lost everything that made him who he was. No quest ties Otar to the player. There's no NPC sending you to Ragnvald, no storyline pulling you toward his sarcophagus. He's just sitting there in the dark, waiting for someone to finally put him down. And that isolation feels painfully appropriate for a ruler whose own people turned their backs on him. But if Otar's story made you feel something, the next priest is going to test your patience in a completely different way. Croesus. Croesus is officially classified as a frost dragon priest. His mask is cold-based. His elemental designation says Frost, and then he shows up to the fight wielding the Staff of Fireballs. Let me explain why this matters. Most dragon priests commit to one element, and you can plan around it. Bring frost resistance for a frost priest, fire resistance for a fire priest. Simple, but Croesus throws that entire system out the window. His spell loadout is exactly what you'd expect. Icy Spear, Ice Storm, Frost Cloak, all frost destruction. But then he pulls out a staff that launches fireballs at you between casts. You show up prepared for ice damage and immediately eat a fireball to the face. The slow, creeping frost spells force you to dodge in one direction, while lingering burn damage from the staff punishes you for standing still. It's a nasty combination that no single elemental resistance can fully counter. But here's where it gets even more ridiculous. His frost spells and fire staff create a dual element nightmare that most players aren't ready for. You stack frost resistance and the fireballs shred you. You stack fire resistance and the icy spears cut right through. He's not a specialist, he's chaos. And somehow that makes him more dangerous than if he just picked one element and committed to it. Now add the real problem. Croesus is the only dragon priest in Skyrim guarded by a live dragon. Sheerpoint has both him and a leveled dragon sitting at the same location, meaning the second you engage one, you're fighting both. Every player who's stumbled onto Sheerpoint at level 15 knows exactly how that goes. You're trying to dodge dragon fire from the sky, while a floating skeleton wizard pelts you with frost and fire on the ground. It's a two-front nightmare that pushes Croesus well above above where his individual stats would place him. And after all that, after surviving elemental chaos and a dragon simultaneously, your reward is a mask that gives 20% bonuses to lockpicking, archery, and alchemy. 0 combat bonuses. Not a single point of extra damage or resistance. You just fought one of the most unpredictable encounters in the game for a stealth utility mask. It's almost insulting, but at least Croesus only has one dragon backing him up. The next priest doesn't need backup at all. Volsung, every dragon priest you fought up to this point has had a weakness, a specialty, a school of magic they lean on, which means a resistance you can stack to shut them down. Volsung doesn't play that game. Here's what makes him different. On paper, Volsung shares the same primary skill set as a handful of other priests: alteration, conjuration, destruction, restoration, but most priests lean heavily on one element or one strategy in actual combat. Volsung doesn't pick a lane. He's not a fire guy, he's not a frost guy, he's not a shock guy. He's all of them, and he will switch between elements whenever he wants, making him one of the most unpredictable fights on the mainland. That unpredictability is the problem. You stack fire resistance, he hits you with frost. You prepare for frost, he switches to shock. There is no single resistance setup that neutralizes Volsung because he will always have something else in his back pocket. Every other priest on this list has a counter you can reliably exploit. Volsung makes that approach a gamble every time, but it gets worse. He also packs Command Daedra, meaning he can turn your own summoned allies against you mid-fight, and if you think you'll just out-magic him, good luck. Volsung has exceptionally high magical resistance compared to his peers, so trying to cast your way through this fight is a losing proposition. You can't out-resist him, and you can't out-spell him. He shares the same level 50 base stats as every mainland priest below him, but the way he cycles through his full toolkit means he fights like a mage, way above his weight class. Preparation actually matters here, because generic strategies fail, and then you beat him, and he drops a carry weight increase, 20% better merchant prices, and permanent water breathing. One of the most versatile magical threats on the mainland drops a mask for shopping and swimming. It's genuinely one of the most practical masks in the entire set for actual adventuring, but the irony of earning it from this fight is almost insulting. Oh, and you don't just walk up to Volsung either. Reaching him requires solving multiple riddles and navigating significant environmental puzzles throughout Volskiga. By the time you finally reach the summit, you've already worked for it. But if Volsung is the priest that punishes lazy preparation, the next one punishes you for showing up at all. Nakreen. Most dragon priests guard a ruin. Nakreen guards the doorway to the afterlife, and that distinction changes everything about how you should think about him. His name translates to vengeance in the dragon language, and he's stationed at Skulldafn, the final checkpoint before you enter Sovngarde, the Nordic realm of the honored dead. This isn't some random posting. Alduin, the World Eater himself, specifically trusted Nakreen to guard the single most important door in the entire main quest. You don't get that assignment by being average. Here's where it gets interesting. Nakreen is one of only 2 dragon priests in the entire game who doesn't rise from a sarcophagus. When you arrive at Skulldafn, he's already standing, already waiting, because he never stopped guarding. Every other priest wakes up when you disturb their tomb. Nakreen was never asleep. That small detail says more about his dedication to Alduin's cause than any stat sheet ever could. In combat, he masters all 3 destruction elements: fire, frost, and lightning. That's more comprehensive elemental coverage than most priests ranked below him, and just like Volsung, this multi-element approach means you can't just stack one resistance and call it a day. Fire resist won't save you from his lightning. Frost resist won't stop the flames. He forces you to actually fight him on his terms. He also speaks exclusively in the dragon language during combat, not Tamrielic. Even in Undeath, thousands of years later, he considers the common tongue beneath him. But here's the kicker. He wields a dragon priest staff that literally functions as the key to opening the Sovngarde portal. You have to kill him to proceed. No workarounds, no alternate routes. Well, technically, some players have discovered you can whirlwind sprint past him to reach the portal area, treating him as an obstacle rather than a mandatory fight. But doing that means forfeiting his mask, and since Skulldafn is completely inaccessible after you complete the quest, you'll never get another chance. He's one of the most permanently missable items in the entire game. Nakreen's power isn't just about his spells or his stats. It's about what he represents. He's the last thing standing between you and the World Eater's master's domain, and Alduin chose him for that job. But if Nakrayan earned his rank by guarding a door, the next priest earned his by being so dangerous that an entire expedition had to sacrifice themselves just to keep him contained. Moroki. Moroke's name means glorious in the dragon language, and honestly, he earns it, because when the Archmage of the College of Winterhold, Savos Aran, first encountered this priest deep inside Labyrinthian, he couldn't beat him, not even close. Aran's solution was so desperate it borders on unforgivable. He sacrificed his own companions, the people who trusted him, to create a magical containment field powerful enough to keep Moroke trapped indefinitely. Let that sink in for a second. When you finally reach Moroke during the college quest line, he's still bound in place. Two enthralled wizards stand frozen on either side of him, the last survivors of Aaron's original expedition. They've been locked there for years, sustaining the prison with their own life force, fully conscious but unable to move or speak. And here's where it gets dark. You have to kill them to free Moroke before you can even fight him. You're the one who ends their suffering, and you're the one who releases the thing they literally died to contain. That alone makes this one of the most emotionally heavy encounters in the entire game. But Moroke himself is no pushover once he's loose. He holds the Staff of Magnus, one of the most powerful artifacts in all of Tamriel, created by the god Magnus himself. The staff can absorb magical energy directly from enemies, draining their power while fueling his own. And if you make the mistake of initiating dialogue with him mid-encounter, he instantly drains your magicka completely. Doesn't matter what protective measures you have, talking to him is a trap. He knows it too. Moroke refers to the Tamrielic language as guttural, and refuses to speak anything but the dragon tongue. That tells you everything about how he views you. You're not a threat to him. You're beneath him. You're an insect that somehow wandered into his prison. His combat stats sit at level 50, matching other high-tier priests on paper. But the Staff of Magnus changes the equation entirely. The fact that Savos Aran, one of the most powerful living mages in Skyrim, couldn't defeat him and instead had to sacrifice multiple lives just to keep him contained, tells you his real power goes far beyond what the numbers suggest. But if Moroke's frost-free arsenal impressed you, wait until you meet a priest whose entire identity revolves around cold, dishonor, and the frozen wastes of Solstheim. Dukan, welcome to Solstheim, because everything you've fought up to this point just became the tutorial. Dukan is the first of the Solstheim dragon priests, and the difficulty spike is immediate. Every single mainland priest caps at level 50. Dukan fixed at level 60. That means more health, more magicka, more stamina, more everything. This isn't a subtle increase. This is Bethesda telling you the training wheels are off. His name translates to dishonor in the dragon language, and here's the thing. Nobody knows what that actually refers to. Did Dukan do something dishonorable? Was something dishonorable done to him? The lore never clarifies. It's just this hanging, unresolved detail that makes him slightly more unsettling than a priest with a straightforward name like Bloodsword or Glorious. Dishonor implies a story. We just never get to hear it. But what we do get is his combat style, and it's brutal. Dukan is a frost specialist. His mask enhances ice spells by 25%, meaning every single frost attack he throws hits harder than it would from an equivalent unmasked mage. And frost magic in Skyrim isn't just about damage. It slows your movement speed and drains your stamina. If you're a melee player trying to close distance, congratulations, you're playing his game now. Every step toward him gets slower. Every swing costs more. Warriors find Dukan particularly punishing because his entire kit is designed to keep you at range while he chips away at your ability to fight back. And he doesn't fight alone. Dukan summons Seekers, those tentacled Daedric servants of Hermaeus Mora, to fight alongside him. So now you're dealing with frost magic slowing you to a crawl, stamina draining with every hit, and multiple enemies attacking from different angles inside a confined tomb space. Whiteridge Barrow doesn't exactly give you room to maneuver. The reward for surviving all of this is the Black Book the Sallow Regent, which grants significant power bonuses that genuinely justify the difficulty spike. At least Bethesda had the decency to put something worthwhile behind this wall. The level 60 baseline, the frost debuffs, the summoned allies. Dukan is a clear step above anything on the mainland, and he's the easiest of the Solstheim priests. But if you think a frost specialist is bad, wait until you meet the priest who turns lightning into an art form, Zakrisos. Every dragon priest in Skyrim has a fixed power level. They wake up from their sarcophagus at the same strength whether you're level 10 or level 80. They're frozen in time, locked to whatever power they held when they died thousands of years ago. Zakrisos doesn't play by those rules. He's the only dragon priest in the entire entire game whose level actually scales with the player. At low levels, he sits at level 25. At high levels, he caps out at 60. That means he's specifically designed to always be a threat, no matter when you walk into Bloodskull Barrow. No other Dragon Priest works this way, not one. The only other scaled encounter even close to this is Miraak himself, and that's the final boss of an entire DLC. Here's where it gets interesting. Every other priest has a fixed historical baseline. Their power is a snapshot of who they were when they died. Zakrisos is different. His power is fundamentally tied to whoever is confronting him. He calibrates to the Dragonborn. That's either the developers being incredibly clever with encounter design, or it's a lore-rich detail about the nature of his power. Either way, it makes him feel less like a static obstacle and more like a rival. He grows to meet you. His name translates to Bloodsword, and his specialty is shock magic. At level 60, he has access to the highest tier electrical destruction spells in the game: Lightning Storm, Chain Lightning, and Thunderbolt. And here's the thing about shock damage that makes it uniquely dangerous. It drains magicka alongside health. Half of every hit is ripped straight from your magicka bar. Mages lose their ability to cast. Warriors relying on enchanted gear or healing spells get cut off from their safety net. He doesn't just hurt you, he cripples your resources. His mask reinforces this perfectly. It boosts shock spell damage by 25% while granting 50% shock resistance. Maximum electrical output with minimal vulnerability to his own element. He's not just using lightning, he's built around it. Like Dukan, Zakrisos summons Seekers during the fight, maintaining that Solstheim multi-enemy encounter format that makes these DLC priests consistently harder than their mainland counterparts. You're not just dodging lightning bolts, you're managing Daedric backup while your magicka bar evaporates. And veteran players don't get to coast through this fight on raw stats, because he's scaled up with you. That level 60 version hits harder, has more health, and casts faster than the version a level 25 player would face. Most Dragon Priests punish you for showing up too early. Zakrisos punishes you for showing up at all. But if Zakrisos adapts to power, the next priest on our list mastered it, and his story might be the most tragic on all of Solstheim: Azidal. Most Dragon Priests wear their masks as trophies. Azidal wears his as a weapon, and that distinction matters more than you'd think. Here's the deal. Azidal is a level 60 fire specialist sitting inside Kolbjorn Barrow on Solstheim, and his mask doesn't just sit on his face looking intimidating. It actively amplifies his fire spell damage by 25% while giving him 50% fire resistance. That means every fireball, every flame wall, every single fire spell he throws hits significantly harder than it should for a mage at his level. The mask isn't loot you collect after the fight. It's the reason the fight is so brutal in the first place. But here's where it gets complicated. Azidal doesn't just throw fire at you and call it a day. He can reanimate fallen enemies during the fight. So every Draugr you killed on your way through Kolbjorn Barrow, they can get back up and start swinging at you. The longer the fight drags on, the more bodies he has to work with. Most Dragon Priests are pure casters. Azidal weaponizes your own progress against you. And then there's the dungeon itself. Kolbjorn Barrow is tight. Narrow corridors, confined chambers, limited escape routes. Fire magic in an open field is dangerous. Fire magic in a stone hallway with nowhere to run is devastating. The architecture isn't working against Azidal. It's working for him. Every wall bounce, every lingering flame on the ground covers a higher percentage of your available space. This isn't accidental. The dungeon layout and his elemental specialization feel like an intentional pairing designed to punish you. Wood elves and lightly armored builds without fire resistance gear walk into this fight and notice immediately. The damage stacks fast. The room fills with reanimated enemies, and suddenly you're fighting a war on multiple fronts in a space barely big enough for one. He also guards the Black Book Filament and Filigree, one of Hermaeus Mora's gateways to forbidden knowledge. So the reward is significant, but earning it requires surviving the highest fire output of any Dragon Priest in the game inside a dungeon that amplifies every flame he throws. The combination of level 60 base power, multiplicative fire damage from his mask, reanimation capability, and a confined environment that turns his specialty into a death trap pushes Azidal firmly into the top 3. But if you think fire in a tight space is bad, wait until you meet the priest who was powerful enough to literally break Solstheim off the mainland, Valak. the Jailer. Every other dragon priest on this list wanted something: power, immortality, worship, revenge. Valak wanted nothing. He was given a job, and he did it for thousands of years, without recognition, without a mask, without a single reason to keep going except the fact that nobody ever told him to stop. Here's the thing about Valak. He was a full member of the dragon cult, a legitimate dragon priest with all the authority that title carried. But his role evolved into something no other priest ever had to deal with. After defeating Miraak, the first Dragonborn, the dragons appointed Valak as ruler of Solstheim with one sacred oath: make sure Miraak never escapes his imprisonment. He governed the island, yes, but that vigilance was the real assignment. Not hoarding forbidden knowledge, not scheming for resurrection, ruling, watching, waiting, guarding a threat that was never supposed to resurface. And the reason he got that job? Because he earned it in the most violent way possible. Legend holds that when Valak discovered Miraak's betrayal of the dragons, the two fought in combat so catastrophically destructive that Solstheim physically broke away from the mainland of Skyrim. The entire island, ripped from the coast like a piece of torn paper. The geographic isolation of Solstheim, the fact that it exists as a separate landmass at all, is allegedly a scar from their duel. Two priests fought so hard they literally reshaped the map. After that, the dragons looked at Valak and said, you rule here, you watch him, forever. And Valak said yes. He maintained his vigil across thousands of years of undeath. No mask, no reward beyond a frozen island to govern, just an eternal assignment that he kept fulfilling long after the civilization that gave him that assignment had ceased to exist. The dragons died. The dragon cult collapsed. Empires rose and fell. Valak stayed at his post. His combat abilities aren't extensively documented compared to other Solstheim priests. He doesn't have a signature elemental specialty or a devastating magical arsenal that players write guides about. His power comes from something else entirely: sheer endurance, historical weight, the fact that he simply refused to leave. When the Dragonborn arrives on Solstheim and Miraak's escape becomes imminent, Valak fights you. Not because he wants to, not because he's protecting treasure or guarding forbidden knowledge. He fights you because Miraak might get out, and that's still his job. Even at the end, after millennia of thankless service, he's still doing exactly what he was told to do. The absence of a mask reward when you defeat him feels appropriate. He isn't here to be looted. He's here because he never left. Every other dragon priest drops a mask because that mask defined them. Valak has no mask because nothing defined him except the man he was assigned to watch. His whole existence was shaped by one person, and that person is next, Miraak. Over 4,500 years old. That makes Miraak the oldest living human on Nirn. Not the oldest undead, not the oldest spirit, the oldest living human, preserved in a realm of infinite knowledge while civilizations rose and fell without him. And unlike every other dragon priest on this list, Miraak wasn't granted power by dragons. He was born with it, the original Dragonborn, capable of absorbing dragon souls as a birthright rather than a blessing. That distinction matters more than you think. See, Miraak served the dragons faithfully. He was their priest, their weapon, their loyal servant. Then he found a black book, and everything changed. Hermaeus Mora, the Daedric prince of forbidden knowledge, reached through that book and handed Miraak something no mortal had ever possessed: the Bend Will Shout, a dragon language incantation capable of fully dominating dragons themselves. The only mortal-level power in existence that could threaten dragon supremacy. And Miraak didn't hesitate. He turned that shout against his masters and devoured 21 dragon souls before his rebellion was finally suppressed. He didn't just fight dragons, he consumed them. Here's where it gets complicated. During the Dragon War, when Hakon One-Eye, Gormleth Golden Hilt, and Feldir the Old came begging for his help against Alduin the World Eater, Miraak refused. The three greatest heroes of the age, desperate enough to ask the most dangerous man alive for assistance, and he turned them away. He launched his own rebellion instead. Lore suggests he may have actually had the power to defeat Alduin if he'd chosen to help. He just didn't care. The dragons couldn't execute him, or wouldn't. Instead, they imprisoned him in Apocrypha, Hermaeus Mora's realm of infinite forbidden knowledge. Think about that for a second. The punishment for a man whose downfall was seeking forbidden knowledge was being locked inside an infinite library of forbidden knowledge. Either the dragons had a cruel sense of irony, or Mora orchestrated the entire thing from the beginning. Valak the Jailer, the entire previous entry on this this list exists solely because of Miraak. One dragon priest's entire purpose across thousands of years was watching for this man's escape, and the fight itself, nothing in Skyrim compares. At the summit of Apocrypha requires you to kill Miraak 4 times. You beat him down, he turns ethereal, teleports to the center of the arena, uses Bend Will to steal a nearby dragon's soul, and fully restores his health. Then you do it again and again. No other dragon priest has a multi-death mechanic. No other enemy in the game forces you to watch them resurrect repeatedly while you burn through every resource you have. But here's the kicker. You don't actually beat him. After his 4th resurrection attempt, Hermaeus Mora himself intervenes, impaling Miraak and killing him mid-resurrection. The Daedric prince decided his servant had outlived his usefulness. That's the only reason the fight ends. Not because you were strong enough, because a god got tired of him. His unique robes, sword, staff, and mask all drop on that final death. And that mask is the only one in the entire game that reflects Hermaeus Mora's aesthetic, rather than the Nordic dragon cult style, because Miraak stopped being a dragon priest a long time ago. He became something else entirely. The most powerful dragon priest in Skyrim wasn't killed by the Dragonborn. He was betrayed by the same god he betrayed the dragons for, born with the power of a Dragonborn, corrupted by the knowledge of a Daedric prince, and ultimately discarded by both sides. That's Miraak, first Dragonborn, last dragon priest standing, and the only one on this list who needed a god to put him down. If you enjoyed this video and want to see the best quests in Skyrim explained, click the video on the screen now.